So I'm aware that sometimes my channel can be a bit of a downer, right? Like we're talking constantly about red flags, things to look out for, to avoid inside women, abusive, toxic behaviors, how outrageous the dating market has gotten. It can be quite depressing. That's why I'm very happy today because we're going to hear from a success story. This is a good friend of mine. His name is Tamer and he's still quite young, mid 20s. Are you 26, Tamer?
Yes.
26, and he's already in a healthy relationship with a woman who he's confident is going to be his life partner for marriage and children. But it was not always an easy road. So we're going to take some time. We're going to hear his life story, where he came from, and how he ultimately got to the place that he is. Hopefully, we can all learn from his story. So thank you so much for doing this, Tamer. First question I've got for you is, in school, did women find you attractive? Like, were you a player? Did you have a lot of options?
So I'll split my answer into kind of two sections. So when we're talking about middle school, no, no, I was an awkward teenager. I didn't really have a lot of friends, and I had a difficult time kind of finding, my social circle there. So I had a crush on my best friend actually in middle school, and that ended up disastrously. Like she understood the dynamic and took advantage of it, and it was a really bad situation. And I like she actually kind of came to me and was like, "Do you like me?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Yeah, that was obvious." And we continued being friends after that. And yeah, she just horribly took advantage of the situation. She really bullied me. She really eroded my self-esteem at the time. So that was middle school. It was pretty much a complete disaster.
Was she the only
And
girl who paid
no,
attention to you?
I think so, yeah.
Did you
At
have
least the
like
one that I had interest in.
Did you
But
have a strategy? I assume you wanted women to find you attractive. Did you have like game? Did you have any techniques? Like, did you do anything? No.
not really, no. Like I was in the belief that since in order to gain my attraction, all women had to do was kind of exist around me, right? They kind of just had to like be feminine, look nice, feel warm and fuzzy to be around. And so because I didn't really see any conscious effort from women, I assumed that it worked the same way for me. And that I don't have to, I don't have to do that. I just have to kind of pray that a woman feels that way around me, and that those two things will kind of intersect, if that makes sense. Me liking her and her liking.
So many men make that mistake of not understanding that there's a difference between men and women, and that what's working for her is not going to work for you. She's a woman. She's allowed to just be. You're a man. You have to do. You have to do something. So I'm guessing, like, did you have any relationships in your early years, high school, university, or was this just be near them strategy, not actually yielding anything?
So in middle school, I had no relationships, but right at the first year of high school, when I was 15, I had a girl send through a friend a love confession letter on the last day of school.
Right.
Like, I was in the States and I was moving back to Israel, and she was like, "Well, this is, my only chance." So she did get that. I was seeking female validation at that point. I would take anything that I can get. But she also, she seemed cool and our interests were similar. So we dated for around 2 months, which are the 2 months that I had left in the States. And and that was like my first kiss and like, my first experience being in a relationship. All the emotions, they were really, really raw,
Right.
like that first love, fuzzy, warm, like you've never experienced anything so euphoric.
But I've had
Type
feminists
thing.
tell me that men don't have emotions, so that doesn't make any sense what you're telling me. But no, you fell pretty hard then, hey?
Yeah, yeah. And when I moved, it was an interesting dynamic. When I look back at it right now, like I could tell, like what she was craving, right, was my masculinity and my presence. And as soon as I moved out, Like we talked about having a long distance relationship and, trying to really make it work. As soon as I moved out and she didn't get that masculine presence from me, it was over.
Right. Well, we've heard that
Um,
many times, like women love what men can provide for them. And so she's not going to stick around in a relationship as a favor to you if you're not there giving her that masculine presence. She's moved on. Well, what about, do you have any other girlfriends or is that it?
no, no. So that was the first one. After that, I had after about a year and a half, I had a I had a pretty long-term relationship with this girl. Yeah, I was kind of like trying to figure out. I was new, right, at the school, relatively speaking. Um, and since I moved from the States, and I was trying to figure out all the women there and trying to see, who I like and who I didn't. I was kind of at that stage. So I had like three prospects and I was moving in between them, trying to kind of just spend time with them. Didn't really go on any actual dates with any of them, but tried to kind of spin plates. I didn't know that term at the time, but yeah, that's effectively what I was doing. And
Wait, you had multiple girlfriends?
no, I didn't have multiple girlfriends. I had multiple dating prospects
Oh, okay.
that I
Yeah.
was kind of moving
Yeah,
between.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Why? Did you have game at that stage or is this still your just exist near women strat?
It's just exists near more women and maybe one of them will like me. And it worked.
Okay.
It did. I got a girlfriend. Yeah.
Yeah. All
Um,
right.
I got a girlfriend and this relationship, it went really smooth, like it was a very like a tiny amount of conflict was in that relationship because we were both at the time very unconfrontational, if that makes sense. So like we were like, okay, like let's just kind of let things flow and let's just kind of, take everything light. And for a while, I saw her as a prospect for my forever partner too.
What happened then?
Um, she broke up with me.
Ooh, why?
So that's a good question. At the time, she didn't even know to answer that question. Um, so she, like, it kind of came out of nowhere, but she just said that she lost attraction, and she could kind of feel it eroding over the course of like 3 weeks or a month or so, where she felt, less and less, but she didn't let me know about that. And so for me, the perception was, from last time I met her, you know, everything was fine. We were, doing our usual thing. And then all of a sudden, the next time she's like voicing all these concerns about the future of a relationship, and then just said, okay, I can't do this anymore. Cut it off.
So at the time, you didn't know why she broke up with you. What do you think now? Like you're older, you're wiser. Looking back, do you have an explanation for why, after what was it, a year that you were dating her, that she suddenly
A
broke
year
up
and
with
a
you?
half.
A year and
Yeah.
that's 18 months. At that age is like a lifetime. So she's invested a lot. So she walked away. Do you now know why? Like what happened?
Yeah, a little bit. So looking back at it, she definitely alluded to a lack of masculinity in me. She told me that she dreamed that I was like ripped. I went to the army and like got ripped. And she told me also that I should read her romantic novels, and kind of understand how it's affecting her psychology, and alluding to the fact that, the men there are a lot more dominant. At the time I was like, well, you became attracted to me just as I am now, so if I just keep doing that sure will work. But right now I'm looking back at it and I'm like, yeah, it's a lack of masculinity. And not only that, I know kind of exactly what triggered that lack of masculinity. And it was right before I was going to get drafted to the army. So in Israel there's like mandatory drafting
Yeah.
for the army. And this really, really shook my world. It gave me a lot of anxiety. I didn't know what I was going to do for the next 3 years. And it really, really shook my frame. And she could tell. And,
Uh,
as soon as the frame went, that was it.
So a lot of guys, they see this when they're dating girls in high school is because when, she's quite innocent, pure. She's a virgin, things like that. She's attracted to like boy bands and guys without hate facial hair who are quite feminine because there's an attraction to boys, but men, it seems scary and, kind of dominant. But girls do grow out of that. What she found attractive at like 16 or 17, she's not going to tolerate into her 20s when she's starting looking for like a warrior kind of man. So, what you said there, oh, but she was attracted to me before, that isn't necessarily going to translate forever. She wants to see a man, step into his masculinity. So, yeah. So, is this then did you kind of learn this lesson? Did you become more masculine for further relationships? No?
No,
You didn't learn? No? All
no,
right. What happened
no, I
next?
didn't.
What's the next chapter?
Uh, the next chapter is so kind of right after the end of that relationship. I was in a bit of a down. It took me, but surprisingly, I bounced back like I think like 2 weeks after, because everything else in my life was so good at the time
Mm,
that like I was doing well in school. I had a great social circle. I was getting a lot of support both from my family and from my friends, and basically it just created a like a really good environment to just bounce back. It's hard to stay depressed
yeah.
when so much love and care is directed towards you. And so very quickly, like about a month and a half, I think I had, I guess what you would call a male orbiter, like the male equivalent of an orbiter, where basically I had this girl who was interested in me from while I was still in the first relationship. Now, I didn't try and start anything, and I didn't purposefully, I didn't feel like I had the power even at the time to purposefully cause attraction in other women. So, like, it happened coincidentally, but I started spending more time with her, and I picked up on the fact that, that she was attracted to me.
Mm.
And then we had a relationship that was 3.5 years.
Wow. This is in your early 20s or were you still a teenager at that stage?
This is like 18. Yeah,
18.
18.
A 3.5 year relationship started at 18. Damn. All right. Good relationship, bad relationship. Like what was that like? Because this is not your current girlfriend you're talking about. This is someone different. Yeah, okay. So tell me
Yeah.
about this.
So my so basically the relationship then was kind of split into two sections. The first half a year was great. There was a lot of emotional intimacy between us, and that was kind of really my focus. Like I learned a bit of like like popular psychology of like different things like love languages and stuff like that, and really try to maximize that emotional bond that we have, thinking that would be the thing, that the end all be all, and then that would be the thing that would keep our relationship together. And that went really well for about half a year, and for about a year and a half, sorry. And um, then our relationship kind of reached a breaking point. Like I was doing really poorly in the army.
Okay.
I was doing a bad job at my job, mostly because I think they just did a bad job in directing me to a place that I would be good at. I was given the job to be a mechanic. That's what they needed. I wasn't good at that. It took me a long time to actually understand. In the end, I finished, and I was a top mechanic, but it took a really long time, and I had a real erosion of my self-esteem over about a year of being told I'm bad at what I do. And it really affected the dynamic in our relationship.
Are you saying that women are not attracted to men who are struggling or have self-esteem issues? That is a huge shock and a huge surprise. So, what did she do? Did she do the high quality woman thing and try and support you and listen to your struggles and like build up your confidence again, or did your failing confidence frighten and panic her and she'd make her want to run away?
I'd say a bit of both.
Uh,
She definitely was supportive. I don't want to take that away from her. She listened to a lot of my griping, and it took months for my like lack of self-esteem to actually affect our relationship. But it did in the end. Like there's
Right.
no question about it.
So some guys, they say you should never even share your problems with women, you know, like you're struggling, you've got difficult emotions in a relationship. Did that experience, like, did you come to regret it? Do you think, God, I shouldn't have told her everything I was struggling with? I should have hidden it from her? Or are you glad that you spoke to her or what?
I'm really glad that I spoke to her. Like she was such an important force in my coming back from that. And listen, I mean, she stuck around, right?
Right.
So I finished the army while still being in a relationship with her, and the breakup kind of only happened afterwards.
So what caused the
So
breakup then?
what I think that caused the breakup is a switch in the gender roles is what I think the major thing was. My frame was eroded during the army, and
Right.
it basically at some point there in the middle it kind of flipped things. She was now the one that was on top of things. She was now the one that was dictating kind of how we're going to do things, where we're going to go, what we're going to
Yep.
do. And I just kind of really went into my emotional feminine at the time to try and like emotionally support her as much as I could. And there was also a lot of codependence in our relationship, which I think was the major thing that really broke it off. I was taking responsibility for her emotions. And at first, she she pushed back, but the more I did it, she kind of, in the end, she believed me, you know. She believed that it was my fault that she was feeling like shit, even though it had to do with anxieties that came before that has nothing to do with me and what, you know,
Right.
what I was doing.
If you present yourself over and over and over again as a willing scapegoat for her emotions, at some point she's going to be like, okay, like, fine, I'll take you. So then you kind of blame yourself in a lot of ways then for this relationship not working out. Is that right?
I do. I blame, you know what? Looking back, I think it's around 50-50.
Yeah.
I think that she had a lot of anxiety. She had a lot of things that she was struggling with
Yeah.
from childhood, and she never really went through, you know, proper therapy to try and sort that out. And there was definitely pushback when I offered it. Um, so there definitely were some very deeply ingrained things that made her, you know, dysfunctional. But at the same time, I wasn't helping. Like I was just kind of blaming myself for the fact that she was upset at me instead of knowing that I triggered something that had nothing to do with me. Redirect the conversation to the core of what she's experiencing and where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Um,
It's interesting listening to you say that because it's so different from the you that I know now who would never make those kind of mistakes, you know, like that's completely opposite of you. So obviously something's changed. Now I'm guessing you went online as a lot of people did and was like, why did my girlfriend break up with me or some kind of YouTube search or something like that and you came across my content or other people's content like mine at some point. Can you tell me what that was like?
Yeah, so I'll actually correct you a little bit and say that that wasn't how I met your channel.
Okay.
So I wasn't in the mindset that there was anything that was inherent to the way that I'm interacting with women and the way that I handle myself in the relationship that needs to be fixed. I took about 6 months to just heal from this really hard breakup. It was, yeah, it was difficult. And then, like, a friend just told me about your channel.
Okay.
Just told me, hey, like, this is a guy that, like, I really like. He has a really nuanced take on things. Like, he is the only person that I know that sums up, like, my thought processes and stance on things. And I really value this friend. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll check him out. And it was a hard pill to swallow. Like I felt, you know, like how they say, you know, you have to take the red pill. I felt that. I felt
Uh,
that it was counter to everything basically that I believed in about finding success with women, you know. I I was surrounded by a lot of feminist ideology at the
Uh-huh.
time, where like women, want this emotional guy who's not afraid to cry. And that is true to an extent, but you've got to have that rock solid, masculine foundation. And that didn't come across to me. And you were the first place where I was like, that's what you need. You need to cultivate your masculinity, you need to build your frame, all of that stuff. I think the most difficult video that I watched of yours that really like convinced me, okay, this is real and I need to do something about it, is your concealed ovulation video.
Yep.
I've
Yep.
been interested in biology for a long time, and it
Sure.
really, really spoke to that part of like, I knew how evolution worked,
Can
and
I
you spoke. Yeah, go
can I
ahead.
pause for a second and I'll just remind the audience in case they've forgotten what you're referring to, and then you can tell me why this made an impact on you or why that video is impactful. So, it's not common in biological species for you not to be able to tell when a woman is fertile, like a female is fertile. You look in all the different species, the most obvious example being like baboons, like they have this huge red swelling on their butt. And then the males find that really attractive, like, all right, it's time to impregnate her. Humans are weird. You can't tell. You don't know when a woman is on her period or when she's fertile just by looking at her. It's concealed. And as far as I know, there's only 6 other species, like mammalian species, in the entire animal kingdom that are like that. And so, evolutionary biologists were asking, well, why? Why do women conceal their ovulation? And the leading theories, and I covered this in the video, are about paternity deception, essentially the ability to get pregnant by a guy with really good genes, so you know is not going to be a good provider, but the ability to convince your long-term partner that he is the father and there's no way of verifying this. And by concealing your ovulation, it makes it a lot more difficult for a man to mate guard her during maybe those 2 or 3 days in the month when she is actually ovulating. And this is, I'm guessing, confronting to Tamel. He's going to tell us in just a moment, because it's like, it really makes like men and women like not so cooperative in their evolution, in a sense that they're kind of at odds with each other, like one's trying to deceive each other, and it's actually built into our biology. It's so I'll put a link in case anybody wants the full explanation to the video. But yeah, Tamer, you came across that video and what was your reaction?
Yeah, so this is kind of the first time that I've heard about, women having a pre-programmed evolutionary strategy that's like against male interest, and
Right.
that we're kind of at odds, at least there. And it kind of opened my head. It finally shattered. You talk about this so much in your channel. It finally shattered that angelic perception that I had of women.
Uh
That's what broke it. I was like, okay, like that's science, and I'm a pretty scientific guy. Like, so I can't argue with that. I just have to accept it. And it was a bit of grieving that I
uh
needed to do there. Yeah. But as soon as I came back from it, and especially about the stuff that you taught about frame, I was a changed man. Like I
right.
really was. My interactions with women were just so much more charged. I could feel the receptiveness of it. I could, like I just experimented with it and just kind of tried. Like I remember like one day, I was running game on women in my work. So it's like a bunch of young people, like hippies, coming to just kind of pick fruit for a living. That's what we did for a while. And so there would be like a nice kind of influx of women in and out of that I could basically run game on it. So these are like coworkers, It's a great place to meet new people. And I would, let's say one day I was like, okay, so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to take charge of the conversation. I'm going to ask the questions. I'm going to be interested. I'm going to, set this strong frame of like, I'm vetting you. And like, she melted like butter. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, holy shit, this stuff works. It does. Um, I was convinced. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I don't know, did you become a fuckboy? Did you use your newfound insights and skills to just like sleep with lots of women? Like, what did you do now that you discovered my content and frame and and game and all that stuff?
So I definitely had a couple of options of, doing casual sex, but I decided not to. Like the quality of the women weren't high enough for me to feel like I'm proud of
Right.
doing that. You know what I mean? And as soon as I kind of felt that internally, it was a deterrent. And the only women that passed the level of quality that I wanted for having sex with were also women that I wanted to be in a relationship with.
Right.
And so I never really had any casual sex because I never found a girl who I wanted to have sex with, but also didn't want to be in a relationship with.
Yep. I completely understand where you're coming from. I was always the exact same way. We in the same mind. So then the, the next girl then that you're in a long-term relationship with, is that your current partner?
Yes.
Cool. And did you meet her fruit picking? Is she like one of the girls that you ran game on? No. All
No,
right. Well,
no,
can tell us about
no.
your current relationship then. Like it's I wanted this to be a success story. It's been like a bummer till now. Like we want to hear now. When did it start getting good?
Yeah, so basically the girls from the work, they weren't really my type. Like they were a certain type of like, hippie, loose, smoke weed type of girl, and I wasn't really attracted to that. Where I started meeting women that were very much my type was in university. So I started, studying biology, and we were all interested in the same things. But not only that, it seemed like there was a very homogenous mindset, and it's not completely, but definitely, a lot of nerds. I'm a nerd, so I like other nerds. And yeah, I was in genetics lab, um, where I met my current partner, and yeah, I asked her, "Nihongo wakarimasu ka?" Which is, "Do you know Japanese?" In Japanese, I saw in the group um, that her WhatsApp status was written in Japanese. And so I knew I had a bit of like a segue into a conversation with her with a common interest that we had. I went ahead, I did it, and yeah, we really engaged well, started talking more and more. Invited her, over to my dorm to study. And on one of the study breaks that we took, I made my move.
Cool. All right. So let me ask you, is she similar in temperament to the girls that you dated in the past? Or now that you had changed and become more masculine, had your preferences changed as well? Like, do you have a type that was consistent or did you shift?
So I think that the majority of traits were consistent, but I was able to, one, my preference was explicitly for feminine women. I now knew that that's what I wanted. I couldn't really point my finger on it. And at the time in those past relationships, I held my girlfriends a lot of time to male standards,
Uh,
in certain aspects that I don't think was fair, and I don't think that I should have. And I saw like a red flags of like, oh, she's not thinking enough. She's not as logical as me. Like that's a red flag. Like I want someone who's logical. Now I know, like, no, that's kind of the feminine. That's what it does. And the fact that we're different is a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. We complement each other. And so I knew I was looking for someone who was more feminine. But in terms of, let's say, common interests and stuff like that, that's something I always looked for.
yeah.
And also the aesthetic itself was pretty similar. Maybe it's just because the average Israeli woman looks like that, but but yeah.
It sort of sounds like, to summarize it myself, in your previous relationships, you were approaching it like two humans dating. Whereas now, like after discovering my content and stuff like that, you approached it quite clearly as no, we are a man and a woman dating. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
All
that
right.
was the difference.
So how does that play out then? Like I speak about this in theory, I suppose, like a lot of my channel. I think the audience would really love to hear, like in real terms, what does that look like? Like what is your current dynamic with your relationship, and like how do you handle things that come up when you are a man and she is a woman and you're dating?
Yeah, so I kind of see myself as the visionary of our relationship, right? So she dreams of stuff that she wants to happen. She's a big dreamer. And I'm like, okay, like, how do we practically do this? How do we go about doing this? I'll give you an example. Um, she wants to move to Japan. That's a life dream of hers, at least for a while, to kind of see if that's somewhere that she wants to live. And I looked at that, and she was keen on like going as soon as possible. Like basically, she wanted every checkpoint in her life to try to go to Japan and see if it worked or not. And she did that for university. But when she met me, she wanted to try and apply for masters in Japan. And I told her, listen, if we want to do this, like really want to do this, we need to think about this. We need to strategize. And my suggestion was, let's do our masters here. Let's wait a little bit. Let's see how we are as a couple. Let's live together first. Let's go to Japan and see how our dynamic is without all the pressure of studying and of trying to live together and make everything work. And those are something that we did. We moved in together. We went to a vacation together in Japan, and we learned a lot about our dynamics. And now, we're planning on getting married soon, definitely before we move to Japan. I feel like the marriage is going to be a really cohesive force that will kind of, make us kind of go through even the really, really difficult things that we'll experience there. And basically what I did is I took this dream that she had, wanting to go to Japan, and I was like, okay, how do we practically do this? How do we get to the point where we have the biggest chance of success, excuse me, of this actually happening?
And so this is a common thing. I mean, just to reassure me, in the negative sense, it could sound like she gets to express whims and desires without having put much thought into it, and then you're like a servant who just runs around and makes it happen. That's not what you're talking about?
No, that's not what I'm talking about, because there was a lot of pushback to, let's say, to moving it back, right? So I have to kind of ground her into reality a little bit. And when it comes to like the big visionary things about our relationship, kind of where we go, how we're going to go about things, I'm the leader. I decide kind of, okay, so this is how we're going to go about this, right? Moving to Japan is my dream too, right? It's a shared thing. But she was definitely more keen of like an impulsive of like, okay, let's do it now. Let's do it as soon as we possibly can. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's wait a little bit. Let's think about this. Let's strategize. What's going to make it so that we succeed in the thing that we want to do?
Okay, so then let me jump in and ask you though, like she says I want to go to Japan, you say yes, but only if we do it like this, and you come up with like a plan, things like that. What's to stop her from just being like, no, like I don't want to do that plan, or we need to do it like a different way? Does that ever come up?
So she I think her as a high quality woman, and she could tell that, one, I was coming from a place that I wanted this to succeed. Like, I was with her. Well, our goal is similar. We just think that like the paths that we're taking are different. That's where we disagree. But in the moment, it seemed like she knew what I was talking was correct. She knew within herself that that's kind of what we needed to do. And there was just like a time of grieving the fact that she has to wait a little bit more to go to her dream place. But she ultimately knew from the very start when I spoke it that this is in her best interest, in our best interest as a couple, and that my my thought process and my frame are actually what's grounding her and making what she wants a reality. And she just has to kind of take some time to grieve, the uh, whimsical aspiration that she had before.
All right, which of these two statements would be more accurate? You convinced her, or she trusted you?
She trusted me.
Is that common? Like, outside of this example, let's just move to even just like more kind of mundane stuff. Are there situations where you'll make decisions like in your relationship for the best interest of the both of you, and she doesn't ask, like, why do you think that? Tell me all your reasoning. She's just like, okay. Or generally, are you keeping her in the loop with like all of your thoughts? Like, I know from our relationship, you would consider yourself somewhat like a leader in a relationship. I guess I'm just looking for a bit more detail as to what that specifically looks like in your dynamic.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So, I'm gonna say that most of my leadership decisions aren't questioned. They're just kind of, she just kind of knows that I'm on top of it and she can trust me. Only the really like big impactful things that are for the both of us does she then, like ask like, okay, you made the decision, like where is it coming from? And therefore, and then I give her an explanation and I tell her, that this is what I thought and this is why I decided this, and you know
Right. So you were specifically looking for a feminine woman. Was she specifically looking for a masculine man? You know what I mean? Like the role that you're playing, is this what she was looking for? She's like, yes, I want you to do this kind of stuff. This is what makes me happy. This is what I'm searching for.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah. So from the beginning of the relationship, we set up that dynamic. I showed her your channel like very early on. And I was like, this guy, I like what he says. And I kind of want our relationship to model a little bit, kind of what he's talking about this healthy dynamic between a man and a woman and the leadership and the submission and all of that stuff. So, and without even trying, she kind of binged your whole your whole library, and she got a really, good idea of what I wanted in a relationship from that. And she was willing from the very beginning. She said that you were like telling her things she already knew
Uh,
in herself, and she were just kind of putting words to it.
That's kind of my thing, is that occasionally you'll see like comments on my videos like, "Oh my gosh, you taught me something new. I had no idea about this." But they're the minority. Mostly, I feel like the comments that are on my channel are like, "Oh, that's exactly how it is. I've never known how to express that before." Like my job is to tell people what they already know, but perhaps give them the language and the thought process so they can have it clear inside their own mind and also be able to talk about it. Did you talk about it with your partner? Like, did you have
Oh yeah,
Yeah, right.
100%. So for most of our relationship, like every video of yours that came out, we're subscribed to Patreon too. So like both Patreon and YouTube, um, we would watch together and it would spark discussion. And I think that your videos really gave us like relationship maintenance, if that will. Like basically it would bring up a problem that we might have even not known that we had in our relationship because it didn't manifest yet. But we could go, wow, okay, we don't agree on this thing. Like, where are you? Where am I? How are we going to deal with this? And so we were able to deal with problems even before they happened, and we were like super invested in the outcome of them. But deal with them just kind of on an intellectual, like emotional, now where are you at, where am I at, kind of hypothetical level. And then when it actually manifested, we were ready.
Amazing. I honestly think that that would be one of the hallmarks of what makes your relationship so healthy, is because you're not dealing with issues primarily from an emotional reactive place, in that you're actually speaking first about, what are my values? What are your values? Where are we coming from? And so few men really feel like the courage, I think, to actually be a true leader in that sense in the relationship, to almost like, hey, let's talk about things more often. A lot of men, they don't really like to talk, but the problem is that if you don't, and you don't have those conversations on your timing, in your frame, when everything's calm and logical, then you leave it to the woman, and then all of those conversations are happening in her frame, which, with all of my most sincere love to women, can be a bit of a chaotic experience. If you want to keep things unemotional and logical, you got to talk about this stuff before it comes up. I'm guessing you agree with me there.
Yeah, 100%. There've been so many times also that, the actual really productive conversation actually happened after the problem manifested, right? So like the problem manifested and we knew that it was a problem, but she was kind of too emotional, and props to her for being able to tell that she's too emotional.
Mm,
Sometimes she'd go, okay, this stuff is going over my head. I just kind of, I need to break down right now, you know? And she would go ahead and kind of release whatever was happening. And then like a day or two later, maybe even a week, you know, where it's kind of disconnected, then we could go and talk about it. And there would be some really good, you know, constructive conversation about where I'm at and where she's at and where we can, you know, meet in the middle.
So is that generally what your conflict resolution sort of looks like? Is a bit of emotion, taking space, then coming back and sort of talking about it?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think so. A lot of like proactive things. So
Mhm.
like let's say, I don't know, we know, let's say that the move to Japan is going to be a big one,
Mm.
right? So there are definitely things that we talk about, you know, that we think might come up, you know, and of course we can't see everything, but so there's that proactive element to like, okay, there's conflicts that can come up in the future and we can see them. So let's talk about them instead of just wait till they manifest. And then there's this other aspect of like, okay, how do we deal with it in the moment, which is mostly through kind of emotional expression of being able to name the core emotions of what is happening, of being able to voice, I'm scared, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, whatever that comes up, you know, being able to say where that's coming from, what we're feeling, and then on top of that, to then be able to, you know, take a break from the emotion and actually talk about, okay, what happened? Why did we get to where we got? And how we can do it better next time.
That sounds really healthy. I don't want to just talk about conflict though. I want this to be a success story. So if unless it's too personal, you just tell me we'll do a different question. But do you feel comfortable sharing like what's your favorite thing about her as a person? And what's your favorite thing about being in a relationship that works? You know, I know you like your life now, but can you tell us some details? Like why? What specifically?
Yeah, so what I really like about my girlfriend is the fact that on one hand, she does have that really feminine side to her, but on the other hand, we can talk kind of on the same level, really see eye to eye with a lot of things. We have a lot of common interests, we have a lot of shared values. And so even if, you know, when we're talking about those really emotional peaks, you know, when everything calms down, the connection and the conversations are so they're so positive. They're so connecting. It really, really builds our relationship. You know, every big conflict that we've had in our relationship, we've grown from.
Mm,
And
that's how
it
it should
really,
work.
you know, yeah, pair bonded us. And so that is definitely something that I really value in our relationship is our ability to, you know, to resolve and come together closer. But specifically about her, yeah, so we have a lot of shared interests and a lot of shared values. She's really feminine. You know, we talked a little bit earlier, you know, she's decorated my place, you know, to look really nice. That's something that, you know, just comes with her femininity and is something that I really love. She's sweet, she's honest, she's really self-aware, and that's so important.
It's a
It's so important.
So important. Some
Yeah.
some men mistake a lack of self-awareness as being like a feminine trait. You know, like, oh, if you want a feminine woman, you just have to be with someone who's emotional and can't think things through and know what they're doing. I say bullshit to that. Femininity in combination with self-awareness is just it's just five-star experience. There's nothing better. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah, I agree 100%. And I guess like another really, really big thing is the fact that she's there for me when I need her. Like I can kind of know, you know, I had a shitty day. I come home, you know, I have someone who wants to support me, who wants to build me up, you know, instead of breaking me down over even the rough things that are going through in my life.
So with some of the like more masculine like guys in my audience, I think they're going to push back when they hear you say something like this because they're coming from a perspective of like, no, man, you don't go to your girlfriend when you've got emotional issues. You know, you can't trust her. You're going to lose frame. She's not going to see you as masculine like anymore. That doesn't sound like at all your dynamic. Like you get right in there, you have those conversations. So like what like why then? Like why are those guys wrong, or at least why are they wrong in your instance?
So I think that it all has to do with the frame that you're bringing it in. So they're correct in saying you don't need to lose frame. But the fact that you had a shitty day in work doesn't mean that you need to lose frame. It just means that you can express the fact that that sucked in a masculine frame where you're showing that you're not really, shaken by it. It's just, it's something that happened. It sucks. You're feeling these emotions. But if you're aware of it and you're stating the fact that you're aware of the things that are going on to you, she knows you're not losing control. And that's kind of when I've noticed that things start to slip in our dynamic, is when I lose control.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're saying it's possible to vent emotionally but still be within control.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I think a lot of guys would struggle like walking that line, for example. So like can you just run through like an example for me? So, you come home and your boss just chewed you out because you fucked up something at work. What would you say to her that's still maintaining control but expressing your frustration, your emotion?
Hmm. Um, I I don't think I would say a lot different. It would just kind of, the air would be that, like, it's not an emotional outburst that I'm having because I have a level of emotion that's been bottled up and I can't take it anymore, It's just like a calculated let out of steam.
Okay.
And it really gets that point across when you're coming and you're talking about the emotions that you're having as you're having them, right? That shows control. That's self-awareness.
Uh,
That's the thing that tells her, okay, you're on top of this. You know what you're going through. She's just here to, be supportive and be a witness to you kind of letting out that controlled steam.
oh man, I so agree with that. To sort of summarize in my own mind so that it's clear, the intensity of emotion, if it's too intense, that might scare her, but you're not too intense. You are on top of your stuff, so that helps. Also, the right context, like perhaps what women find so scary about really emotional, out of control men is the unpredictability of it. I thought we were having a nice dinner. Now suddenly you're throwing a tantrum and throwing glasses and stuff. But if there's a clearly discernible, like, ah, this thing was annoying, so I'm feeling a bit annoyed, it might reassure her because, right, of course you're feeling that emotion. This is not an unexplained or frightening emotion, or you don't seem out of control. This seems entirely proportionate to the situation. And I don't know if you said this, but I think you'll agree with me. You're not expecting her to solve your problems, right? Like you're sharing it, but you're still in control. I know you mentioned codependence earlier.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So definitely keeping codependence out of the relationship has really been important. In one of my past relationships, codependence was kind of the theme. That was the thing that was eating the relationship from the inside. And so something really important that I learned both, from your videos and from other content is how to find codependence and eradicate it from my relationship. And that's a skill that's being proved to be really useful. And a huge part of it is making sure that you don't have your partner take responsibility for your emotions,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
It's a back and forth type thing. If you're the man, right? So if you're setting a good example for how to deal with emotions, a lot of times she'll look at that and go, I want to do that. That seems to be working. That seems to be good.
Yes, I completely agree. And it leads me to the next line of questioning I want to talk about because that reliance on other people for your emotions is something that you and I have spoken about before. So, for a bit of context, I've known Tamer for about a year or a year and maybe 2 months or something like that. Because on Patreon, I started these online like men's support groups. We call them the Hero Circle. We meet for an hour and 45 minutes every single week. And Tamer was one of the founding members for the group that I was running for like the European time zone. And so I I know some things about Tamer's relationship, but I know Tamer as an individual a lot more. I'm wondering, did being in the hero circle help find these codependent like tendencies or traits inside yourself at all?
Yeah, yeah. The hero circle, I can definitely think of a couple of instances in where I brought something to the hero circle, and you're like, that's a bit of codependence there. Like, so that's been good, but I'll give credit to myself with no false humility. I learned pretty well, even before the hero circle, like how to take care of codependence, how to see it, how to notice it, and how to erase it.
Well, that's good. So then you've done like the hero circle with me for a year plus, and I'm guessing you're going to stick around. You really, really enjoy it. So let's talk about what have you learned being part of this group. We have 9 guys who are all together, 9 including myself. Like, what are the biggest takeaways you've had from this last year?
Yeah. So a huge takeaway that I have is kind of a couple of things that are in my psyche and are affecting kind of the way that I interact with basically everyone. Um, most of my interactions are painted with this, and so the first one is kind of through a couple of events that through childhood that were rough, kind of instilled me with a core belief that love should be conditional towards me. And not only that, but it should be only if I'm behaving, if I'm doing good. And then on top of that, my experience in the army has kind of shaped that even more. I took some abuse from a commander there in my course, and that has kind of shaped my self view of not only do I not deserve love if I'm doing bad, but I don't deserve love if I'm not actively doing good. If I'm not actively good at the tasks that I'm given, I deserve to be treated essentially like shit.
A lot of men are going to be able to relate to this, Tamer, this feeling that your worth as an individual is not given or guaranteed. It's very dependent upon like what you're doing or how you're contributing to others. And yeah, you're kind of like less than dirt unless you're justifying your existence. So I remember we've worked on that stuff. How are you feeling now? Have you changed? Like, have you shifted? Like, do you feel different about yourself now? Does your self esteem rely less on like pleasing others?
Yeah, a huge part of the healing process for that was just acknowledging it, was just knowing that these are tidal forces within me that are pushing me in one way or another. But there definitely has been some healing afterwards of like kind of accepting and understanding where I'm coming from and being able to be aware of in what situations that comes up for me and when that is painting the way that I act.
Yeah. See, I remember there were times you would come to the hero circle and you're like, oh, this is bothering me in my life. It's something about school or it's something about work or whatever like that. And then we dig like deeper into it and you're like, I actually think the issue is the army, or like something in my child, like there's that depth and you see it's these core issues. They just manifest in different ways in our present life.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And definitely the depth that we got into the hero circle was unique for me. I don't think I've really ever dug that deep into the core of what makes me tick as much as I did in the hero circle.
So, what do you think the hero circle provided then that was like unique that prompted that kind of like self analysis and awareness?
Yeah, so I think some of the exercises that we did were really helpful. So let's say we did an exercise in which I was me and you were an army commander.
Yeah.
And I kind of acted the way that I did. I had a really hard time standing up for myself. And then we switched roles and you kind of showed me, okay, this is how you could be, in these situations. And that was really impactful for me. But not only that, but what was really important and kind of brought all of the experience together was the fact that as that was happening, I was surrounded by people that I love, by people that I care about, and by people that really care about me and are supporting me through this. So, like, it wasn't just a one-on-one thing, right? It was me and you and seven other guys who are witnessing this thing happening. And as I was, you know, in my emotional depth and breaking down, they were there to support me, to validate the emotions that have been repressed for so long. And that was such an important and integral part of it, because instead of those emotions coming up and, my reflex to just kind of push them back down, or, to be ashamed of them, there was acceptance, there was support. There were kind words, said towards me about how, awful the things that I went through were. And that was such an important piece of the puzzle that helped me heal.
I mean, there's a lot of shame that thrives in secrecy, right? Like, especially with men, when we're failing at work or in our relationship, or we've just got some emotions or something like that. It builds and builds and builds and becomes such a destructive force that guys are trying to drown in, like, addictions like alcohol or video games or porn or whatever like that. It's such a powerful experience to actually speak these aloud. And, as a slight nod to those guys who think that it's not a good idea to do all of this stuff with your girlfriend, it's one of the reasons I was so passionate about creating the Hero Circle, because we wanted a place where guys could actually just talk and open up to each other, and then have that supportive, like, atmosphere of men who are ready to support, to validate, and to help you through it, even with some tough love when possible. But it's not that common that the guys are really strong with each other, because the bond is so intense, you know what I mean? It's like what you said, when you're seeing that you're going through something that's really hard, and then on the screen there's just like 8 other guys who are smiling at you, nodding at you, saying, "Brother, I've been through the same thing." The bond is really, really intense. Like, when I think about the members of our circle and the other circle that I run, the affection, the feelings I have for them is so strong. It's like a supercharged friendship, right? Because it's not small talk, you just go
No.
right to the really big stuff, and then you feel so much less alone. I'm so passionate about this work. It's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you, Tamez, to talk about your experience in the Hero Circle and now running a Hero Circle, which we'll get more to later. But yeah, don't you love how close the guys are in the relationship, and the bond's
Yeah.
amazing?
Yeah, yeah. It's the reason why I'm there. Like, that's why I've stuck around. I've worked through some really hard things, and a big part of why I joined was to kind of learn how to facilitate a men's group. So I had a men's group like before the Hero Circle. And I was like, okay, well, I want to see how Alex does this. It seems like he's, got this together. Let me be a witness to it. And also, there were a couple of things that I wanted to work on in myself. And I'm looking at it, I'm not done working on it in myself, but definitely the major force that's keeping me in the Hero Circle is the intense bond that I have with the other members.
Yeah, it's powerful. Have you ever done, like, individual therapy? I'm just curious if you can contrast, if you can contrast it with the group work that we do.
Yeah, so I actually haven't done like individual therapy. I had like one session one time with my brother's therapist. Um, but we talked about him, no, not about me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I definitely know a lot about therapy. So I've
Yeah.
read a lot of books. I've been really interested in kind of the things that have, went into that, and the tools that therapists have and use. And I guess what I would say is that one-on-one therapy, it has its advantages, but in the Hero Circle, there's definitely a very, very powerful force that comes from being within a group.
Yeah.
So let's take the example of shame. We brought that up as an emotion. I think shame is one of the stickiest emotions you can have. It's really, really tricky to get rid of, because it has to do with the fact that you're being perceived by other people. And so I think kind of the only way that you can really alleviate that is through a social setting
Yeah.
where you're having this alternative social experience to what you perceived like it's having. So in your mind, you're perceiving like, oh, if I share this, the other people aren't going to like me. They're going to perceive me as less. And the real thing that finally sheds the shame from you is the fact that you're sharing this in front of other guys and they're accepting you. They actually, a lot of times, actually feel more connected to you since they know like what you're going through, since they, can understand the emotions that are coming up for you because of certain events that happened. And it's such a powerful force in the hero circle.
Yeah, I mean, we call that reality testing, and we do that quite frequently. And that's something that you can't get necessarily one on one because you have 50% of the opinions and they have 50% of the opinions. But quite frequently, like in the group, and we've seen this happen a number of times, someone will be like, I'm so sure it's like this, or I'm so sure that I feel like this and I'm this kind of a person. And then we'll be like, all right, well, let's check what the group thinks. And we'll kind of take a vote. And everyone's like, nah, man, like, we really disagree with you. It's actually like this, or we see you like this. And when you know people's intentions are good and they feel positively about you, they have no reason to lie or bullshit you. And so if they're all giving you positive encouragement, even when you're down on yourself, it's a very, very powerful means of like transforming yourself and your own self-perception. And I'd say that it also works well in the negative. And it did occur to me that there's something slightly perhaps unethical about what's the contrast between hero circle and therapy? Because they're completely different things. And I'm not a therapist and I've got no training whatsoever. But in a sense, like what I like about the hero circle is it's my understanding of psychology really, really applied in that I'm a big believer in therapy. I've been to therapy, but the person sits there to sort of reparent you in a sense, and they give you this unconditional positive regard. They're feeling really, happy towards you, very accepting, very validating. And sometimes as men, I don't think that's really what you need. You actually need a bunch of your closest friends who know you, know your patterns, know your struggle to give you a kick up the butt and be like, dude, you're fucking up. You're falling short here. And I don't want to pussyfoot around sometimes, like when guys reach out to me for like an individual session, like, not a therapy session, but like an individual consultation, or they order a private video. I'm not there nurturing their feelings, like I want their feelings to be nurtured by a close friend of theirs or their girlfriend or whatever. But to me, they come to me for the truth. Like, man, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. But then one of the reasons that's why I started the Hero Circle, because I'm always a bit worried after I deliver potentially like reality shattering information to people about how their relationship is actually toxic and the girl's taking advantage of them or whatever like that I just give them that information and then I leave. It feels a lot better in the Hero Circle to actually, talk through this stuff, have it be a dialogue, go through that conversation of whatever's going on in their life, and then support them to emotionally process that. It's very powerful and it's very, very fulfilling. I really, really enjoy it. And I knew that you would enjoy it as well. So, like about 6 months ago, like Tamer, he'd really taken to the Hero Circle. So I said, hey, man, I'm planning on expanding. I really believe in this as a vehicle for helping men's mental health. I want to start more. Are you interested? I know you've already run men's groups. Do you want to work with me? And Tamer, you were like, yep, I'm keen. Let's do it. So we worked to each other. I trained you up in all like the techniques that I use and stuff like that. And now you've started your own Hero Circle. So what's it like now? Well, you got a couple of hero circles, but what's it like being on the other side? Because you were just a member participating, and now you're doing what I do. You're like facilitating it, and you've got your own like members. How are you finding the experience so far?
So facilitating has been really rewarding up until now. Like that's my major takeaway. I had to kind of employ some social engineering, I think, to kind of get everything started, but it took very little effort. And as soon as the ball started rolling, I just kind of, sat back sometimes and just was like, wow, these guys, they're so bonded, they're so invested in this already. It's been a really, really positive experience up until now, and also a positive relationship with the other guys for sure. I like being the platform in which they can come and talk about things. And a lot of them have voiced that they don't really get to talk about the things that they talk about in the group. There's no outlet. They don't have anywhere to go, whether it be, dating stories that they have with other girls, or like really intricate relationship dynamics that they currently have that they're struggling with. You know, they just kind of voiced, this is the place. This is why I'm here. I came to talk about this type of stuff because there's no other outlet for it. And I'm so happy to be the platform for them to do that.
Yeah, and that's really like describes so many men. Like I think there is a certain subset of the male population that's like, I don't like to talk. I don't really want to listen to guys like, talk about their problems and their feelings. But then there's also a huge segment of men who have just got so many of their ideas and their thoughts bottled up. And they look at their old high school friends and they just go, these guys are completely inadequate to deal with all of like my new intellectual curiosities, my shifting worldview, my new perspectives. And I think it could work with any group of guys, but the fact that they're all like fans of me and my channel and like my worldview, I think really helps as well. Like what I've noticed is that the guys that we get into the groups, they all have like a certain similarity, like a passion for this kind of information and for self improvement. So it's like a really high quality like bunch of guys. I think they are the ones who are attracted to this kind of thing. That's been your experience too?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's definitely credit to you and the quality of your content, bringing in the guys together. There's also credit to us and the kind of, the filtration that we do. I've gotten some people, I've accepted them, I've gotten some people and I've rejected them. The hero circle isn't for everyone, but for the people that it's for, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think there's some misunderstandings about that because I know with Nicola, one of the other facilitators, he's actually I don't know if I told you this, he sent out his rejections, people who he interviewed and said, "Sorry, you're not right for the circle." And they were 100% under the assumption that if I pay my money, I'm in, right? Like this is just a service like anything
Mhm.
else. Whereas I gave quite strict instructions to Tamara and Nicola that they're only to let in people who have a certain kind of like approach to this, people who are taking it seriously. One, because yeah, like we're not therapists, so if people are in crisis or whatever like that, we're not remotely equipped to be able to deal with that. But second is because we want it to be a positive experience. One of the reasons I called it the hero circle is so that it's not like just doom and gloom. We're not necessarily there to sit around and talk about like, women, standards are too high and I can never get a girlfriend. It's for guys who are optimistic, who want to improve, who want to celebrate the heroic things they're doing in their life and not feel like they have to shrink and be small, like a genuine celebration of masculinity. Where if someone comes online and like we're doing our weekly check-ins, like, man, I approached 3 women, I got one girl's number. Everyone's just like, fuck yeah, man, good for you. It's like, man, gym 5 days in a row this week. Fuck yes, awesome. Like that's really cool. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, how many guys do you reckon that you rejected in your interview process that applied?
Mm. I think it's around half. I think it's around 50-50.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I've definitely accepted less people than I've rejected, but mostly just like because of like logistical things. I think the actual like accept rejection rate is about 50-50, something like that.
I've had some guys who I've rejected from my circles, but they haven't been like permanent rejections. They've sometimes like the guys they'll come and they're just a bit like, I don't know, maybe like a bit quiet, or sometimes they seem like a bit loud, and you're just like, I just don't know how that's going to fit in this current group dynamic, because you need to learn how to be, part of a group, to take your turn, take your time, be respectful. That's one of the interesting things about the hero circle is that we're allowed to talk about the relationships with each other. You can say, "Hey, man, you really pissed me off," and we will deal with it, And that kind of intense social feedback is not typical, which is one of the reasons why the bond gets very, very strong. But some of those guys have been like, "Hey, look, hit me back in 6 months. We'll see, like, if things have changed, if you're coming back." And I don't think it's ever like permanent. It's just that having done the hero circle for a while now, I kind of know how it works and I know what individuals are going to make it work. And if an individual presents very differently from the norm, there's always the concern that it's going to potentially throw the balance off. And so yeah, I'm a little bit more cautious like that. But that's how I run mine. One of the reasons I chose you is because you're going to have something very valuable, and what we've spoken about in this session, in this interview here about your relationship, is a huge part of that. In that I think that your style with your relationship is pretty open. It's pretty transparent, you know? You're not separate, and yet you still have that dichotomy, and that's something that's it's always very difficult to kinda get across, and I wanted guys to be part of your group so that they could learn from that, because I think you do it so well. I really admire you and your relationship. But I wanted to, just before we end, I suppose, in case people are interested in finding out more about the Hero Circle and maybe even joining like Tamer's circle, I'll put a link down to the website where you can apply to be part of it. But maybe just like advertise it a little bit. Like, what is your particular style of focus? Like, what do you think the culture of your groups in particular are going to be like?
Yeah, so I don't need to speculate, right? I have a group already
Yeah, yeah.
running and I know exactly what the culture is. It's very open, it's very vulnerable. Right from the beginning, guys opened up about the dynamics in the relationship, about how they're feeling, about the aspirations that they have. And we go really deep. We go really deep and it's pretty quick too. It's like a lot of times it's from 0 to 100, someone, I open up the floor and I say, okay, who wants to talk? And someone brings in like something pretty profound, right from the start. And we just we get into it and all the guys are really keen to understand where he's coming from and to try to help him along. So I definitely think my style is depth and cutting through, I hate small talk. So I really like cutting through, to the deep stuff and working on that, not being afraid of it, but actually embracing it.
Emily and I, we're gonna put a sign in our house that says, "This is where small talk comes to die."
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's, I guess, the best indication if you're the kind of guy who likes to go deep and like doesn't want to faff around and is ready to experiment with being vulnerable, Tamer's the right facilitator for you. That's kind of his style and his focus. I don't think I have any more questions. I'm glad that we got to do some uplifting, positive content on this channel instead of like red flag number 110 that you haven't heard of yet that I'm going to tell you about. That was good. It was enjoyable. Any final words from you, Tamer?
um, I'm trying to open up another group and I'm welcoming the guys who want to really, push themselves, get out of their comfort zone, be vulnerable, be open, learn about themselves and about how they work. I'm welcoming them. And I hope, to see you in the consultations and in the circles.
How's your schedule for the next week or so? Because once I post this, do you remember last time after we posted the initial advertisement, you had like 30 people like sign up on the website. Have you got time to do like more like initial consultations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have time. Yeah, I'm currently right now in a pretty free schedule where I don't have like it's the end of the semester. I don't have studying.
Okay.
And yeah, so I'm pretty free.
All right.
And I'll make sure that my Calendly is reflects that.
All right, no worries. All right, well, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this more like success story kind of content, please like the video, please leave a comment, please share it around. Typically, these longer form, like positive like things, they don't tend to perform so well on YouTube. YouTube likes things that are highly emotional, divisive, that sort of thing. I would like to do more content like this. I would love if you guys could support that. And by engaging with it, it helps the algorithm so that I can feel incentivized to do more positive stuff like this. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.